This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop on research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared by students, faculty, alumni, and other members of the USC community. All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Viterbi Voices. I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Maya. I'm a current senior studying industrial and systems engineering here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering. My other co-host is unfortunately not with us today, but I do have another special guest for you all. So I guess a mystery guest. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Aisha. You've probably seen me on the VSA Instagram and whatnot, but I am a senior majoring in biomedical engineering.
Yeah, and VSA stands for Viterbi Student Ambassadors for all of you who are looking at our content. So if you look at the Viterbi Student Instagram, Aisha and I, sometimes we just post about our life, what we're doing, what it's like as a Viterbi student. So pretty much like on this podcast. But yeah, if you guys are ever interested in looking at our other content, I know there is a Viterbi student, a TikTok and Instagram. We have this podcast. There are videos. Yeah, a bunch of different things. Stuff. Yeah, so Aisha is bringing us another episode of this podcast today, and I personally am very, very excited about it. Aisha, would you like to just give a quick overview of what's to come?
Yeah, for sure. So this week I interviewed one of my really great friends in BME. Her name is Veda. I met her way back in freshman year during COVID, and she just has a great story about coming to the US as an international student, not being really sure what she wanted to do, and then ending up switching into engineering following her freshman year. So we kind of talks about that transition and just what she's been involved with in college and now what she's looking to do in the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we're definitely touching on so many of the things that I hear prospective students asking about. So coming in as an international student, switching your major from something that's not engineering to engineering, what that transition looks like, and going into consulting, because the fact is there are a lot of engineers, but there are a lot of different outcomes that we have at Viterbi. So I certainly know a lot of people, and a lot of people we've had on the podcast recently have made that transition from engineering to consulting. So I'm personally very excited to hear about Veda's transition. I actually know her from the Society of Women Engineers as well. And Aisha, I think we mentioned this at the beginning, but BME, that stands for biomedical engineering. So,
yes.
Veda switched from biology to biomedical engineering, yes. But yeah, that's enough of chit chat, I guess. I'll let all the listeners get right into the episode, and we'll see you back on once it's done in the back half.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Viterbi Voices. Joining me today is my dear friend and fellow BMEer, Veda, who's just going to be talking to us a little bit about her coming to USC and transitioning into college and all of the incredible, amazing, exciting things she's done since she's been at USC. So, Veda, hi, how are you doing?
Hi, Aisha. Such a privilege to be here. Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good myself. Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us today. For all the listeners out there, Veda is one of the most incredible people I know. So I hope that you're able to learn as much from her as I have in just my 3 years knowing you. Isn't that crazy?
That is insane. It's like a whole lifetime.
I know. I feel I've never had a time where Veda was not in my life.
Literally.
So funny. Okay, well, we're just gonna get started going way, way back in time. So Veda is an international student. So Veda, I was just hoping you could tell us a little bit about what you were looking for in high school, looking to come to college, and kind of the different aspects that went into what you were looking for.
Yeah, of course. So definitely a little flashback into the past, thinking about it. But when I was in my junior year, I was almost certain that I wanted to go to the US to
Mhm.
pursue my undergraduate studies, and then possibly stay on after for exploring different careers and grad school, etc. And I think there were a couple of things that I was looking for, and a couple of things that USC specifically satisfied, or that really excited me about USC. The first one was I was very undecided about what I wanted to study.
Mm.
And you get the chance to kind of play around with your majors at a lot of different schools in the US, which is one of the things that really drew me here. But more than that, USC stood out because it has so many amazing programs in such vastly different disciplines and areas of study. And the thought of, or the optionality to transfer between schools and to kind of explore different subjects was really, really exciting.
Mhm.
So that was definitely one big pro about USC. Another one was I was very interested in sort of the human body and biology, but I wanted something that was more applicable. So it was really nice that they had amazing science programs, but also had this world-renowned engineering school that I could potentially transfer into. Because when I applied as a biology major, and then I kind of went
Right.
engineering process to be BME.
Mhm. Wow, that's just like crazy to hear. So I guess what made you eventually like decide to switch into BME from biology when you first came?
Yeah. I think when I started my first semester, I realized that most of the people in my biology classes, like my
Mhm.
major classes, were either pre-med
Yeah.
or very convinced that they wanted to go into research. And I
Oh,
very
yeah.
quickly realized that I fit neither of those two buckets.
Huh.
Uh,
Very fair.
yeah. So I was like, I kind of need to figure out something that is a little broader in its scope that could sort of be applicable to a broader range of careers potentially afterwards. And I also really enjoyed sort of the more math problem solving side of what I was learning. So that kind of made me think about engineering as a discipline. And then I spoke to a bunch of people who had gone through the pre engineering process. The pre engineering advisors were super helpful because they kind of gave me sort of a layout of what life at Viterbi could look like. And then the pre engineering process itself was taking one engineering, one math, and one science class and doing well enough on them. So the process itself was really simple. It was just kind of deciding that I wanted something broader in scope.
Mhm. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean it was so funny when we like found out that you had not started as BME because again, it feels like I've known you like my entire life. So like to think that you like didn't come in as BME and actually like switched into it was funny to learn too. I guess
Yeah.
because of COVID too.
Yeah.
It just kind of offset that maybe a little bit.
No,
Um
it definitely did.
yeah. Yeah, but that's really interesting. So when you I guess when you came or decided you wanted to come to USC from India, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced when moving like across the entire world to the US?
Yeah. No, it actually sounds crazy when I think about it that way because
Yeah.
I don't like, yeah. I think looking back, it was especially crazy
Mhm.
because when we started, it was 2020 and it
Mhm.
was peak COVID.
Peak
So,
COVID. Yeah.
yeah, no, it seems like a lifetime ago, but
Oh, really? Yeah.
my first semester was actually completely online
Mhm.
from India. I was taking classes from India, like
I know.
through,
I remember you on your computer at like the wee hours of the morning, like coming, like being nocturnal to be in
yeah,
class with us. Like that, that was crazy.
yeah, no, insane times. And so that was obviously not the best situation to be in. So my spring semester, I decided to come out here to LA and live near campus because campus was shut, just so I could sort of assimilate myself into the college life as much as I could during that time. So it was definitely a very strange time to be making that big move. But I think there were a couple of things that sort of helped. One was I had a community of other international students who were also moving at that same time with me, and having that community made it a lot easier to sort of assimilate into life here. I think like being an international student and moving is one thing, but it's also just the transition from high school to college is a big one. And so doing both of those together during COVID was like a lot, definitely. I think in terms of like culture shock / adjusting to life in the US, personally, I didn't have too much to sort of adjust to because I went to an international school back home. So a lot of things were quite familiar to me. And then I think USC also has a lot of like a big international community, one, and two, a lot of resources to sort of help students acclimatize well and adjust to life. And then a lot of it was just a learning process on the go. I remember we like don't have dryers back home, and so the first time I used a dryer, I didn't know was a thing from it. So me and my roommates thought our dryer was broken because our clothes wouldn't dry. And then we asked someone to come help us see it. And he was like, yeah, you're supposed to remove the lint from the dryer. So there were definitely a lot of learning experiences.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is so funny. I don't think I knew that story. That's a great one though. Oh my gosh. So now that you have like been in LA for a little while now, I guess this is like your third year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Third year. I know the time just like goes so fast. It's crazy. But now that you've been in LA for a little while now, what are some of like your favorite things about LA?
Ooh, I love that question. I was in LA for the summer, so a lot of discoveries made. I think the best thing about LA, okay, there's so many things, but let me segment a little bit. One of the biggest things about LA, which people always talk about, but like truly, it is wonderful to have such amazing weather. That's makes you start taking advantage of it. And I think like going to the beach on a warm day and like getting into the water is literally the most refreshing feeling in the world. I'm currently taking a beach volleyball class, which is actually insane when I think about it, because who goes to college and then takes a beach volleyball class?
I know, that's like, it's so funny. So funny that we can do that stuff.
I know. So I think the beach and the weather, and just the accessibility to do a lot of naturey things is really, really fun. Like going camping, going hiking, going to the beach. A lot of that were sort of things that I started to enjoy after coming to college because I had access to it. And I think LA played a big role in that. And then the second thing that I absolutely love about LA is it's so multicultural, in terms of like food, in terms of activities, in terms of different things. Like in terms of food, we have Little Ethiopia, we have Artesia, which has really good Indian food. We have Little Tokyo. We have so many like pockets of places that have really authentic, really great food and coffee. So
And coffee.
yeah, the coffee shops here are amazing.
So good. So good. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that is great to hear. And I know you touched on this like a little earlier. But are you planning to stay in the US post grad or like specifically LA?
Yeah, I think so. I think I want to stay in LA for at least a couple years after grad, get started with my career, see and experience life in LA as a working professional and not
Mm-hmm.
as a college student. I think that's going to be a transition.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exciting stuff.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, great to hear. So now that we kind of learned a little bit about your background, coming to the US, starting as not even an engineering student, but now being a very smart, successful one, I can testament to that for sure. What are what are some of your involvements on campus?
Yeah. I think my biggest involvement over the last couple of years has been in Rise, which is a startup consulting club on campus.
Mhm.
We basically do pro bono consulting for startups in and around the LA area. It has been an incredible experience being a part of the club, I think both professionally and socially. It was really nice for me to sort of expand outside the engineering community and be able to meet people from a wide diversity of backgrounds and also sort of engage with different startups to learn not only about like how the startup environment sort of works, but also understand a little bit about the consulting world. So that was a really cool involvement. I think apart from that, I'm involved in Project Rishi, which is a social service org where we do different social service projects in India. And again, it's a really nice community of people from similar backgrounds, which has been nice to have. In terms of more engineering related activities, I worked at the Chung Lab in the Michelson Center. For a whole year, I was doing a lot of cell work, a lot of wet lab research, helped with a couple of publications, got a lot of different skills, very heavy research based skills, which was really nice to have.
Mhm.
And then I also had a little stint with Med Design, which is one of our project-based
Mhm.
medical design sort of incubator organizations on campus.
Mm-hmm. As you can hear, Veda is incredibly involved in so many different fields, which is amazing. I know you were talking about your little stint in med design. Could you
Yeah,
tell us more about like just the project you were working on?
I would love to. Um, so my team and I, we were creating a device that basically helps monitor sudden drops in blood pressure when a person stands up or basically changes their position. And specifically, this device was for Parkinson's patients. So a lot of people don't know this, but this is a symptom that Parkinson's patients face very commonly, and it's not talked about as much, but essentially when there's sort of abrupt movements, like when they stand up or when they like change their position very abruptly, their blood pressure can drop really quickly, and that can sort of lead to maybe fainting, falling, things like that.
Mhm.
And so our device was a very simplified sort of blood pressure detector, and its functionality was alerting a caretaker for the patient a few seconds before the fall happened, as soon as the blood pressure dropped, so that they would be able to assist the patient going ahead.
Wow. That like I feel like you guys sound like you're part of a med tech company. Like an actual like established organization. But yeah, just I mean med design is a really big club among BMEs. Definitely a great way to get hands-on work, and as you heard from Veda's great explanation, just like working on really like applicable projects. And you guys, were you guys actually building this beta?
Yeah, we were. So, Med Design is a really nice club because it kind of leads you through the whole process of how medical devices are designed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in it for a whole semester. And so we kind of started, so you start from scratch essentially, and you like figure out your problem area, like what problem you're trying to solve, what the disease area is, what specific problem there is, and then you do a lot of research into what devices exist, where the current gap is,
Mm-hmm.
and then come up with an idea, and then test your idea to see if there's any actual applicability. So we were doing interviews with some Parkinson specialists at Keck, and different other places. We did a couple of interviews. And then so you like go through that process, and there's a lot of research that you're doing on the side. And then once you like validate your idea, you start thinking about the design of your product, and then you start creating your product. I know like there was one team that got as far ahead as creating a patent for their product and publishing like a couple of
Wow.
research journals for their project. Our team didn't get as far ahead. We were still like by the end of the semester, we had finished making a design on CAD, and had sort of a physical prototype, but
Mm-hmm.
we sort of figured out the wiring and the electrical parts of it yet. So
Gotcha. Well, we can leave those for the electrical engineering. But that's awesome. And to hear like that a design got their own patent and like was actually like moving forward. I mean, it's almost like essentially a startup at that point, right? Like building building a physical product and like seeing just really how far you can take it and if it can actually go into the real world. So that's awesome. Super
super cool stuff. Yeah, people
yeah.
are super talented in the org and come up with really cool ideas for
Mhm.
things.
Awesome. And then to kind of go on to another one of your involvements that you briefly mentioned, what was your research centered around?
Yeah. So my research was I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain this.
It's been
I
a little while.
it has been a long while,
Uh-huh.
but essentially I was working with a PhD student, and we were studying um atherosclerosis and basically the formation of clots in blood vessels and how that leads to sort of blockages that eventually lead to heart attacks or like basically things like that. And specifically, it was a microbiology lab, and we were specifically looking at sort of the the biological interaction of exosomes and how exosomes are involved in this process. Um, so my work specifically was a lot on the exosome storage and analysis procedure, and it was more sort of skill building in that aspect. So a lot of what I was doing was culturing all of our cells and then isolating exosomes from them, which were then used to inject sort of nanoparticles, drugs as nanoparticles were injected into the exosomes, which were then used in the body to prevent those clot formations. Um, I don't know if that made sense, but that's like a brief gist of what was happening.
Wow. I mean, you definitely just showed like just how smart you are in that explanation because even I was like, oh my gosh, exosomes? Like, let me like dig through my brain to remember my biology of what that is. Um, but wow, that sounds I mean, that is just great. And another like great opportunity that USC kind of provides is those abilities to do research with actual PhD students and work on these types of projects. So great to hear about your specific one and just like a little subset of what's going on here. I have kind of a funny question for you next.
Yes.
That's not, I feel like that's not usually asked, but I know that you don't do research anymore. And I was just wondering if you could kind of explain the reasons as to what made you move away from that kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah. Keeping it completely honest here.
Yeah.
So as I said, I think when I was in high school, doing wet lab research specifically was something that I always aspired to do. And so it's something I was very excited about going
Huh.
in. Um, and so I did end up working at this lab for a whole year, a whole summer. For my second semester, I applied for a grant, and like they had like a bunch of poster presentation sessions, things like that.
Mhm.
So I think I really gave it a shot. And
Mhm.
the thing that I realized was I was not very excited every day that I had to go into the lab and do something. Like it wasn't exciting me. It wasn't like giving me that rush of adrenaline or like any sort of like I was just not as excited about the prospect of doing it.
Mhm.
And so I think that was that I like initially didn't realize that, and I kept giving it a chance, but I think it set in that I wasn't enjoying the work that I was doing as much. And I think it's one of those things that you kind of have to try to figure that out. And
Mhm.
so I'm really glad that USC sort of had the opportunity to let me try. And then eventually I kind of figured out that it wasn't something that I was enjoying. And I think looking back, what are some reasons that might have like been there? I think one of them was a lot of it needed a lot of patience, and it
Mhm.
was very repetitive in nature.
Mhm.
And so, and it wasn't something that like you could mindlessly do repetitively. You still had to be sort of very cautious with all the steps that you were following and how meticulous you were with the procedure. And that was not something that I really enjoyed. I think
Uh-huh.
I like in comparison to like my experience at med design, like I
Mhm.
enjoyed sort of the type of work that I was doing there in terms of reaching out to people, interviewing them, doing research, as opposed to figuring out actual chemical procedures in the lab and carrying them out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's great to hear. I mean, on my end too, I also did my, my stint in research
Yeah.
for a couple years and just decided like that kind of work wasn't for me either. Which I think you exactly touched upon. Like it's definitely something that you just have to try, especially like with the opportunities at USC, right? Just
Mhm.
like being able to have that chance to do research, I think is great. And like, you just got to go for it. But that doesn't mean that you're gonna like it necessarily. And in our cases, unfortunately or fortunately, we'll see. We just didn't end up vibing with the research life as much as we had kind of hoped because I mean coming into USC for me too, just like they're always pushing like the research opportunities that um are kind of offered here, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, having those opportunities is great, but I think it's important to find out, you know, it's just as important to find out what you don't like. Um what am I trying to say? It's just as important to find out what you don't like as what you do like, if that
You're so
makes
right about that.
sense.
It's
Yeah,
almost a prereq. You need to
yeah,
find out what you don't like to find out what you do like.
exactly, exactly. Like you said, like you didn't even like when you were bio, you realized like people were pre-med and
Yeah.
research based, and that just wasn't wasn't what you were feeling right then. So, yeah, I think that's awesome that I mean, we're able to have this experience and you doing like this amazing work in your lab, but then, also being in med design and Rise and being like, oh, you know what? I kind of like this work better. And even though you might have come in like really loving wet lab work and thinking like that was the trajectory for you, like it's okay to figure out, oh, that's actually not quite what I had expected. And then finding out what you do like and going in that direction instead.
No, for sure. You said it so well. I think I was connecting with someone from my high school who's actually applying to colleges.
Mhm.
And I said something along the lines of shifting away from sort of wet lab and research. And he was shocked because
Mm.
that was my thing in high school. I was like, I'm going to college and I'm going to do lab like
Uh-huh.
biology research. And I think it's part of college, and it's kind of why we do college, is to figure out what we really want and what we don't like and what we do like.
Yeah,
So
exactly, exactly. That's so funny that you were like the sciencey girl and now you're gonna become the big consulting girl, which we're gonna get to later. I promise. But yeah, it's just so interesting to see like, I mean, a lot of our peers in BME are going into academia, doing research, right? Um,
yeah,
yeah, and they really enjoy it. And that, I mean, that's great. Like they're doing important work. Um, and for us, like it's just kind of finding out, where we find enjoyment in other important work tied to our field. So,
exactly.
yeah, interesting. It is very interesting. And I mean, like coming into college for me too, I thought, maybe I'll go and get a PhD or do research and then like help on these like big research projects that are, fueling biotech and healthcare and whatnot. And then coming to college, realizing that, just lab work wasn't my jam as much as I thought it was gonna be. And then knowing that now that I want to do like a more, just like client facing role, and being kind of more on the management end. So, I am thankful for research for helping me realize that that was a direction that I now want to go in. So,
Exactly. You
yeah.
said it so well, Aisha.
Thank you. Thank you. I try. So now that we talked about a bunch of, research and engineering stuff, we will get to the consulting later. But what kind of things do you do like outside of engineering, whether that's like through classes or just for enjoyment? Like what in college have you found outside of Viterbi that you've ended up really liking?
Yeah. Um, I think one of the big things, I think I kind of touched upon this earlier, but one of the big things that I realized after coming here was I really love outdoorsy things.
Hmm.
Uh, and I'd like been camping once, which was like part of the summer camp thing when I was like in middle school. So that was the limit of my camping experience.
Uh-huh.
But I went camping like 4 times, I think, last semester, or 5, like a lot of times. I
Wow. Yeah, that's a lot in one
Yeah,
semester.
yeah. And then I've tried getting on a lot of hikes with Peaks and Professors, which is one of the really cool orgs on campus. My roommate's a trip lead for them, but they basically take professors on hikes around the SoCal area. So I've tried going on a lot of different hikes. I've done a bunch of those over the years, met some really cool professors and explored some really nice naturey areas. Um, love swimming in the ocean and just having a nice beach day.
Mhm.
Um, recently, I've started playing some beach volleyball, definitely trying to get into more sport
Uh-huh.
activities. Um,
Mhm.
love also going to the gym and getting a workout in, but trying to get a little bit more colorful this semester with types of physical activity.
I like the colorful. I like the use of colorful in this scenario.
Thank you. Um, very careful use of diction.
That's so fun. And I know, have you tried? I know you were thinking about joining the MMA club. Have you gone to one of those yet?
I have not. I really want to go for their meetings.
Yeah.
They have like kickboxing and like really cool things, but I
Hmm.
want I want to do that. Maybe
Yeah.
next week. No, this
Maybe
isn't
next week.
next week.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And MMA stands for mixed martial arts for all of those out there that, like me, did not know what that stood for.
Me
So
too. I didn't know.
that is so fun. Oh my gosh. I also have not been to Spike Ball Club yet, Veda. So maybe next week we'll
We'll have
sign
to make it
for both
happen.
of us. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Spikeball is so fun also.
It is. And I just want to try to get better, not like play competitively with all like the really good people, but just like so I can hold my own would be nice.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. That's a
Yeah.
good to have.
Thanks. We'll see. We'll see. We'll aim for next week for sure. So, kind of going into what the future, I know we're seniors now, which is both with it, which is I think bittersweet is the best way to put it.
Yeah,
But
for
saying it
sure.
like it's like, oh my gosh, like leaving college and adulting like is such like a crazy concept, but at the same time, like starting like independence and like not having to turn in homework every week. Like it's just very bittersweet. So now that we're kind of like in that area, I just wanted to ask you um what you are kind of looking at post grad and looking to go into.
Yeah. So I touched upon Rise earlier in this conversation, but I joined Rise and it had a huge impact on me because it kind of made me realize that I want to start looking at sort of consulting as a possible career
Mhm.
trajectory. And so I think my current post-grad plans are to go into consulting post-grad. I worked in consulting this summer, actually for a biopharma company. And then I think after post-grad, that would be kind of the goal is to go into consulting, work in sort of med tech or biopharma adjacent fields, like with those kind of clients to sort of be engaged with that area of work, but
Mhm.
more on the strategy side, uh,
Yeah.
helping with business decisions and working with a team to sort of problem solve different problems that these companies face in
Mhm.
LA, which is super exciting.
Yeah, that is awesome. Oh, every time you talk about your post grad plans, Beta, I'm like, oh, look at her go. And just to clarify for everybody out there, when Veda says she thinks she's going into consulting, she is not thinking. She is going into consulting with one of the like biggest, best consulting firms in the city. So, proud friend moment. For
Aisha really hypes me up always.
it's a big deal. And just like,
Aw.
oh, that is so like nobody is better equipped to do that than you, Veda. So, oh,
Oh, you're
so
making me
exciting.
see. You're gonna make me tear up. This is so sweet. Everyone,
Oh.
Aisha's the best. She's really
Oh, oh, well, we can go back complimenting each other forever. But kind of going back to like where this interest in consulting started, like what made you join Rise, which eventually led to this kind of sparked interest in consulting in general?
Yeah. So one of the things is my uncle, who has been sort of my mentor and my advisor all throughout high school and college, is a consultant. And so it was a career that I'd heard about before. And it always seemed very very intriguing to me. I don't think I saw myself doing it when I was in high school or even starting college. But it always was something that I heard about. And I think there were a couple of reasons for it. One of them was it really appealed to me as someone who was always very undecided and had very parallel interests in different areas. Um, because you're not limited to sort of one role or one company, even. You're looking at multiple different companies, multiple different industries, multiple different problems from different sectors. And that really excited me, like the ability to have the opportunity to switch between different types of problems, different types of roles, different types of companies while being in one job, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that really excited me was the actual nature of the work. I really liked that it was project based, that you were working with a team, that it was client facing, and you were interacting with a lot of different people from different backgrounds, working together to solve essentially a business problem. So that kind of appealed to sort of the problem solving nature, the engineer in me. And then I really liked the interpersonal aspect of being able to interact and communicate with people. So those were kind of the things that drew me to it. And then USC also has a huge sort of pre-professional lens to it. And
Mhm.
so consulting is a word that's like thrown around campus, like by everyone. And so,
Oh yeah.
yeah, so there's a lot of orgs on campus. There's a lot of sort of consulting talk. And so it's something that surfaces every student when they come here.
Mhm.
So that, along with joining the club and then working on projects and realizing I was really enjoying the kind of work, eventually took me over to the dark side, I guess.
The dark side, but I mean, but if that works for you, you know? And like I
Yeah.
feel like you're still aiming to stay like within the biopharma, biotech space. So like kind of being able to pull like what you know from BME and like from engineering and just all of this med tech stuff and then like applying it to better know the companies you're consulting. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like that makes you a standout in my personal opinion.
Oh, I think, well, adding to that, just for all the listeners out there, so they know there's optionality. Um, my team this summer, actually, like my direct boss
Mhm.
was a bioengineering, did bioengineering in his undergrad. And then everyone else on my team actually did either engineering or an engineering adjacent field for their undergrad degree, and they were all doing consulting. So
Wow.
it really helped with perspective a little bit to see that there were people who sort of make that transition, and that engineering is really broad in its scope of the kind of careers that you can enter.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, that's great to hear. I mean, even great for me to hear trying to look for jobs. But yeah, just seeing kind of like the trajectories that everybody can make and like you going into consulting and your team being all like engineering science backgrounds but still being able to work at a very high level within the consulting field and being super successful at it, and then also having peers like on the research end doing all of this amazing research and making like leaps and bounds in those fields. It's
Wow.
just crazy to kind of think about like the stretch that um I guess across people in engineering.
No, that's so well put. I think it's honestly very exciting to, like, even if it's like our friend group having a conversation,
Literally, yeah.
amazed by how everyone is doing such cool but such different things. Like,
Mm.
one of our friends is an EMT, one of our friends is like doing really cool research, one of our Aisha worked at like everyone is like incredible. Like, I'm sure you know all about Aisha's
Oh,
experiences, so many different things, from startups to studying abroad to doing all these cool things. But BME students are truly incredible.
yeah, truly incredible. And I mean, could not be more thankful that you decided to be a BME student. A little late, but You made it here, which is all that matters. Awesome. So now that we're kind of wrapping up, the last question that I have for you, Veda, is just what kind of advice would you give for prospective students, albeit like students that might be, thinking about coming to the US from an international country, students that came or students that are really passionate about wet lab work. I know we spoke about that for a while. Students that are thinking about going into consulting or thinking about maybe wanting to get an engineering education to use in different like applicable areas. I guess just in general, like what do you think your best advice for them is? Sorry, I know that was a lot. So feel free to
No,
like take it as take it as little or as big as you'd like.
no, that was a great question. I don't want to be too generic, but also, as you can see from all of these answers, I really do think that if I had to give one piece of advice, it would be to have an open mind. As you can see, like I came in with a very defined sort of goal as to what I thought I wanted. And I think coming out, I'm doing something very different, different major, different career path, different organizations than I thought, different activities than I thought I would be
Yeah.
engaged. So I think having an open mind gives you more opportunity almost because you're more willing to experiment with things that you may not have been willing to try otherwise. And that kind of helps, at least it helped me figure out what I wanted to do. And I think that's one of the coolest parts about college really is that you're figuring yourself out. You're figuring out who you are, what you like, what you want to do. And it's the perfect space to sort of go down multiple different trajectories, come back to the start and try again and, really figure out what fits your boat. So I think my piece of advice would be to come in with an open mind.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I'm like sitting here, a senior, like feeling inspired by what you just said.
Oh,
Oh my gosh, I think that is so true and so great. I mean, like exactly what you said. College is a time to grow and find what you like and what you don't like and just, kind
yeah.
of see where it takes you. So I love that. And I think that is like the perfect note to end our podcast on. Thank you so much, Veda, for hopping on today and kind of just taking us through your entire experience. It was great to hear from you.
Of course. Thank you so, so much for having me again. It is truly a pleasure and privilege to be to be asked to come on this podcast and moreover to know Aisha. And for like one of the biggest reasons why I'm so glad I'm in BME is because of Aisha.
Oh,
And I'm so glad to have been here and been able to share this experience and talk with you.
yeah. Well, awesome. Okay, well, that kind of concludes our podcast. Thank you so much again, Veda.
Of course. Had so much fun. Thank you for having me.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Aisha, thank you for bringing us yet another great episode of the Turby Voices. So I'm sure like the recap at the end, but what is one thing that you want people to take away from your episode and Veda's experience at USC?
Yeah, I think Veda said it perfectly at the end. She gave some advice to people or students looking to maybe come to USC or just looking at college in general. And her best advice was to just keep an open mind, which I think is so important, especially coming into college. She talks about how, coming in, she had a very like set like trajectory. Like she thought she wanted to go into research, and then ended up making like a complete 180 switch just based off of new clubs she joined, new experiences that she had the opportunity to pursue. So I think yeah, if I had one biggest takeaway, even for me, that was like great to hear, especially as a senior, just reminding myself to like keep an open mind as we like are now going to be adulting really soon. And to just
Scary.
take, I know, scary. So just, you know, taking experiences as they come and never missing an opportunity to try something new.
Yeah, completely. And I know like similar to Veda, I think coming into college, like I never changed my major. So I was always industrial and systems engineering, but I was definitely planning on like going into academia. Like I thought that research and like that was the trajectory
Yeah.
that I wanted. But like after having actually done that and then hearing about the other things that the people in my major were doing, I decided like, oh, I don't think this is necessarily for me. So now
Mhm.
I'm looking at a bunch of things that I had no idea even existed before
I
coming into
know.
college.
I'm right there with you, Maya. I like
Yeah.
coming into USC, they're like, you know, research is great. And like I was able to do like really amazing research. But was able to figure out, you know, that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do right out of college. I had never even heard of consulting like in my life before coming to USC.
Mhm.
And now it's like, oh, that could be interesting. So you never know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. This question, I apologize if this stresses you out, but is there anything in particular that you're like looking at or keeping in mind as you're doing recruiting right now?
I
Or
know. That's the big question, huh? I think right now I'm kind of just looking for, I mean, honestly, any opportunity is a good one.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
I'm hoping to get a return offer back, knock on wood, from where I interned over the past summer at Amgen. So that would be great. I know some stuff is in the works there, so we'll
mhm,
just keep our fingers crossed. But outside of that, definitely looking into more like on the product management side of engineering, kind of like honestly, kind of more on the ISC
mhm,
side, like looking at managing projects, being more like client facing,
mhm.
and on like the coordination of the team, and assets and that kind of stuff. So yeah, kind of a switch from where I came in as well, but hopefully it'll end
Mhm.
up going okay.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see where you end up. You'll have to keep me posted on how that's all going. And
Mhm.
yeah, I know it's such a stressful time right now. I think
Mhm.
I can speak for all of the seniors in that everybody's kind of reaching this point. And honestly, even the underclassmen, like people who are looking for an internship, and
Yeah,
recruiting season is in
in
full
full
swing.
swing, full swing.
Starting to get busy, but yeah, it's awesome to be back at USC and surrounded by people who are doing the same thing.
For sure,
Um,
for sure.
yeah. All right. So thank you again, Aisha, for such an awesome episode and experience that we all get to learn from. And yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day. To everybody listening, I hope you have an awesome week, and we will see you back here next week for another episode of Viterbi Voices.